Xi Jinping got a standing ovation in the US. But don't be fooled, the Chinese Communist Party is just playing nice until it can land the death blow. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Incogni. You probably know that companies are collecting your personal data, but you may not realize just how many. Dozens, maybe hundreds, most of which you've never heard of and you have no idea what they're doing with it. Incogni helps stop them. I'll explain more at the end. So, I've noticed something very strange, and it has me real worried. China is playing nice with the US. Recently, China honored the World War II American veterans known as the Flying Tigers, who helped fight against the Japanese. It also allowed the Philadelphia Orchestra to tour across China, and hosted California Governor Gavin Newsom. Look, if you want to be nice to Americans, don't host Newsom, keep him. China's charm offensive especially ramped up in the lead up to and during the APEC summit in San Francisco last week. There, Xi agreed on curbing fentanyl production and resuming military talks, and told American CEOs that China is willing to be a partner and friend of the US. And he was greeted with thunderous applause. Xi also visited an old friend from Iowa to dinner, a man Xi met when he first visited the US in 1985 as a touring local official. Wow, what a folksy guy. Almost easy to forget he's a genocidal dictator. Chinese state-run media is also churning out a lot of positive coverage in English. China portrayed Xi's trip to the US as a stabilizing and positive thing for the international community, and highlighted how Xi has bonded with Americans in the past, and promoted hope for China-US friendship. Gosh, why was there ever any tension between the US and China anyway? Oh right, it's a Marxist-Leninist regime that constantly talks about destroying America. Now this isn't the first time China has put on a front of wanting peace and cooperation with America as a way to hook foreign politicians and business leaders in. Sometimes, China churns out two completely different messages depending on who its audience is. State-run media might say nice things in English, while in Mandarin it'll talk about how evil the US and its allies are and how China needs to prepare for conflict. But something is different this time. Currently, Chinese state-run media is putting US-Chinese relations in a positive light, even in Mandarin. The People's Daily, the CCP's official newspaper, is promoting stabilized and improved US-Chinese relations. State-run Xinhua news agency says the Earth can accommodate China and the United States, and their respective successes are opportunities for each other. As long as both sides adhere to mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation, they can transcend differences and find a way for the two major countries to get along correctly. The future of Sino-US relations is bright. Yes, the future is bright. Just ignore all those military vessels we're pumping out and the state-sponsored simulations of us launching missiles at Taiwan. Then again, I guess a future war with Taiwan would also technically be bright. Of course, state-run media still frames problems between the US and China largely as the fault of the US, and implies that the solution depends on the US. But China has gone above and beyond to play nice with the US. It even canceled an anti-American TV series called Shanganglin, based on the Battle of Triangle Hill during the Korean War. The series was supposed to be airing on November 13th, but it was replaced with the TV series This Place of Peace of Mind is My Hometown. This is a complete 180 from how the US was being treated very recently. It's even given many Chinese netizens whiplash over the complete U-turn on the US. One commentator said, "I haven't been online for 2 days. A look at the trending topics shows the atmosphere between China and the US is as if a couple in an arranged marriage fell in love." Another commentator said, "I don't know whether I still need to hate the United States in the future." It can be very hard knowing what's politically correct in a communist country. It keeps changing. But there's a reason why the CCP is doing this. It's because the regime is on the brink of collapse. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. So China has been unusually friendly lately, which means you know trouble's brewing. China needs money. It's in the middle of an economic meltdown that wiped out $1 trillion from the economy. I've covered a lot of reasons why. A real estate crisis, deflation, and massive youth unemployment. And the real killer is that the steady stream of foreign investment that propped up the Communist Party is drying up. Foreign investments in China recently dropped into the negative for the first time in decades. Might have something to do with all the raids on foreign businesses and locking up foreign employees. To give you an idea of how bad it is, the CCP even cut spending on its own police force. You know it's bad when a communist regime obsessed with policing everyone around the globe has to make these kinds of cuts. That would be like if McDonald's took hamburgers off the menu. It's McFish or nothing now. Turns out being run by a clown wasn't the best financial decision. China can relate. This is why China is acting all friendly now. She is putting on a show, and American business leaders are giving it a standing ovation. Now keep in mind the CCP isn't making any meaningful reform. The crackdown on foreign business in China is going to continue. One senior American business executive who attended the APEC dinner with Xi said Xi offered no hints of concessions to business or even interest in more investment in the Chinese economy. But there are people in the American system so desperate to work with China that they're buying Xi's attempts to look friendly, and they're making concessions to China they shouldn't. I mentioned at the beginning about the agreement on fentanyl and military communications. To get that, the US had to lift sanctions on a Chinese police institute that's involved in genocide. And military communication is pointless if China just continues to ramp up military aggression, even after APEC. Then there's the cooperation on the climate crisis. Well, check this out. The US is letting China, quote, support climate cooperation among states, provinces, and cities. That's a weapon against the US. China knows the US federal government is taking a harder line on the CCP. That's why the CCP wants to work with local governments and people like California Governor Gavin Newsom, people who are easier to buy off. So just because Xi is acting nice, remember, a leopard doesn't change his spots, and a Pooh Bear is always after honey. And this episode is sponsored by Incogni. Whenever you do anything online or use apps on your phone, there's a huge number of companies that collect your personal data. When I signed up for Incogni, I discovered there were dozens of data brokers that potentially had my private information without my permission. And these companies can get hacked, spreading my private information even more widely. For example, recently hackers broke into Seiko, the company that makes watches, and stole 60,000 items of personal data on customers. That included names, addresses, and phone numbers. Could have been yours. If a big company like that can be hacked, think about all the smaller ones that have your personal data that can also be hacked. So what can you do? Get as many companies as possible to delete your data off the internet, and that's what Incogni does for you. Incogni has already gotten my details removed from 160 of these data brokers, with a lot more in progress. And I didn't have to do anything after signing up. Incogni just handles it. So I recommend you get Incogni for yourself. Click the link below or go to incogni.com/uncensored. The first 100 people to use the code uncensored will get 60% off. Get your personal data off the market with Incogni. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.